Hello everybody, and on today's episode of Taylor Talks Comics, we'll be talking about the Marv Wolfman George Perez run of the new Teen Titans in Omnibus format. Thank you everybody for watching. Please subscribe, like the video, and comment below with any of your thoughts or corrections. Maybe I'll get some things wrong, or you can correct me on things, or clue me in on some sort of fun facts that I'm not aware of. I always love that. Comic book recommendations will be great too. So today we're talking about volumes 1 through 4 of the DC Omnibus line of the Wolfman Perez new Teen Titans. Wolfman, Perez, and company, because Perez would eventually leave the run and we'd get some new artists on the line. So this is volumes 1 through 4 of the newest printing, the newest version of this omnibus format for these books. There is a previous version of their lighter blue spines, different design. I'll actually flash a picture on the camera right now, and then implore you to not buy those versions at all. I don't care if someone offers you 20 bucks a volume. Don't buy those. They're very subpar to these volumes, and you get these volumes fairly expensive if you shop at the right places. But the reason why those are so terrible compared to these and so inferior is that the binding on those, for two reasons. The binding on those older volumes of 1 through 3 of the light blue designs, the binding is so tight and glued that it makes for a horrible reading experience because you're constantly having to force the pages open. I'll show you an example when I show you the great binding on these books. And then also, they're incomplete. Those older versions only include issues that both George Perez and Marv Wolfman's names are on. So if there's like a fill-in artist for George Perez on a certain issue, they wouldn't include that. These, however, are all-inclusive. These include the entire run of New Titans issues all the way through volume 4. And I'll go through which issues that are for each volume. And obviously you can see the spine designs on these are very congruent, very nice looking, very even, matching. It's not something you can always say for DC collected editions. And then also, they're just, DC in general is not the best at committing to finishing out a whole run. And it seems like they are at least committed for now for this run. 4 volumes is a lot. They have a 5th volume solicited. It was supposed to come out in 2020, but it was solicited pre-COVID. So I'm not entirely sure if we will get that this year, but we might get it next year. We'll have to see how that works out. Try to fit these all on camera here. But volume 4 was canceled and resolicited at one point, and volume 5, and I think if my math is right, there will be a total of 7 or 8 volumes that would include the entire run. A quick thing, if you hear any crackling and stuff, I heard some comments on some previous volumes, or issues, previous episodes. People were wondering if the spines were cracking, because that usually is a sound you hear when a glued spine is breaking from a binding. That's not the case. It's the background that I have here that's making that noise. I'll tell you if the spines are in bad shape. So these are all the volumes. You can see the covers here. I'll show up close when I get to each volume what they look like. They each have a character on the spine, some more artwork on the back, and they tell you which issues they include there. So let's start off with volume 1 here. So the only thing I don't like about these editions is that they have this cheap cardboard cover here that DC is, I don't know if you can see the synonymous for. A lot of their omnibuses have this. You can see like an engraving here, which is nice, I guess. But it's just this cheap cardboard, and that doesn't make for a nice edition. But everything else about these collections I love. That's the one downside to these, I would say. But so volume 1 here. You get the cover here, which is the cover of the first official issue of the New Teen Titans by Wolfman and Perez. And then on the back you get some more artwork and tells you which issues this includes. So this includes the first 20 issues of the classic series, along with DC Comics Presents number 26, and the 4-issue miniseries, Tales of the New Teen Titans. So that's just the first volume. And I believe, if I remember correctly, the first volume of the light blue editions include the same exact issues. So volumes 1 of both editions are the same. Again, and you can hear some crackling. I relax my spines all the time, but again, you can see the beautiful eye there in the spine. You can see how it lays very flat. When I said that the other editions were glued, I don't have them on hand because I would never let them in my house because they're so bad. But it was just like when you have a very tight glued binding like that, it does things like this. Like where there's all the kinds of gutter loss and they're glued together. You want it to lay flat like this so you don't have any gutter loss. You have a very nice reading experience. Alright, so each edition has like these plain black end papers, a little title page that matches the cover design. Tells you about all the creative team here. All written by Marv Wolfman. Art was by a few people because George Perez didn't always work on every issue. You have some of the great artists here, like Dick Giordano, Kurt Swan, Carmine Infantino. So it's pretty cool to see them draw the Titans. You have a wonderful table of contents. This is not always a strong point of DC's omnibuses, but this whole set includes a nice table of contents, including the issue number, the date that it was issued, the title of the issue, the page numbers they start on, and if any of sort of the creative team was different than Wolfman or Perez, it'll tell you that too. And then you get these awesome forewords by Marv Wolfman, which are great because he does a foreword in every volume. I believe we'll see here in a second, but I think that's the case. And he'll just talk about the issues that are covered in there and the kind of the historical background of what was going on with just those issues. So you kind of get like a ongoing biography, if you will, of what was happening. So this is the first issue that they appeared in. This was a DC Comics Presents title, I believe. I don't know if this was like a backup title to another story. I'm not sure how that worked. The cover does say it was a free only preview. But I think, and he might even mention the forward here, but it's kind of like a preview title. And you see, it has this weird border around it showing it's a special Teen Titans preview. I'm kind of glad that they kept that just for historical purposes. You can experience it the same way people did back then when they first had it. And these are on these, this is a glossy paper, but it's not a shiny glossy paper. I don't know if that makes any sense, but the artwork does play really well on it. I'm not the biggest fan of glossy paper. I prefer matte, but for being a glossy paper, this is very nice. And this is the first issue. Like I said, it matches the cover art here on the New Teen Titans book. So this is what starts the story. You get this amazing George Perez artwork on this book, and George Perez was a very prolific artist for DC during this time. This is like early 80s, I believe. When I think the first issue came out in 1980. Let's see, in the October 1980 is when when DC Comics Presents came out, 26. And George Perez, the thing that he was best known for was being able to pack in a ton of different characters into just a panel or a layout. There's a ton of different characters and give them like life and have these dynamic action scenes, which is perfect for a team-up book. You want an artist that can pull that off. But this story is just amazing to me. I love this run. It's so fun. You get all these different characters, which you can see here. These are the first main lineup of the New Teen Titans. And Marv Wolfman does such a great job of giving them all different character backgrounds and developing these characters in such a way that makes you really start to care about them and want to know and see what happens with their journey. This issue here issue number 2 is the first appearance of Deathstroke the Terminator. So he's obviously a very key figure in the entirety of this run, and one of many characters that was created by Marv Wolfman that went on to live a long and prolific fictional life story career throughout the comic books. So I don't want to spend too much time on each volume, but I do want to keep flipping through here and show you guys the amazing artwork. And as you can see, these are kind of wordy. There's a lot of text in each panel. And whenever someone asks me if this, or I ever see anybody post on a Facebook group that I'm in, if this run is worth reading, I always tell them, I always warn them that it can be very wordy, but not in a, this was Bronze Age. So in a Bronze Age way, Silver Age, I know Golden, Silver Age, and sometimes even Bronze Age comics can get kind of a bad rap for having lots of dialogue and taking lots of time to read versus modern runs. And that is the case here. These will take much longer for you to read. However, the difference being, when you compare this to a Silver Age or Golden Age book, is that the dialogue all matters. Marv Wolfman does a great job of not beating you over the head with unneeded or wasted exposition. You don't get a lot of useless dialogue and stuff just re-explaining everything over and over again. It was one of the, not the first by any means, but one of the first comic books that really told an ongoing story throughout every issue that you needed to follow every month, which is why this format is so great for that. Here's a great few issue arc with Doom Patrol, which ties in with Beast Boy, who changes his name to the Changeling in this run. But he does come from the Silver Age Doom Patrol run, which you can find out about here in this omnibus. I might cover this one day. I don't know if they have a picture of the Beast Boy on here or not. I know he wasn't in it in the beginning, but he is in that book. But it kind of ties in nicely. One of the reasons why I bought that omnibus actually for Doom Patrol is because of this arc. I want to know more about the backstory of how Changeling and his relationship with these characters plays out, because they talk about it a lot in this volume. But yeah, Marv Wolfman does a great job of just having his... there's never, like I said, there's no wasted dialogue. Every piece of dialogue and text here is necessary to the development of the characters. And just in general, I feel like when you get into a team-up book of this nature, you've got to kind of go in it thinking you're going to have more text than a typical book anyways, because it's a team book. There's more characters to have speaking roles. When you have a Spider-Man book and Spider-Man's doing some swinging around the city and stuff like that, there's only one character as far as the heroes go to worry about with developing. There. So let's move on to volume 2 now. So this is the cover for volume 2. We got Cyborg on the spine, and then some more back art. And so this collects issues 21 through 41, and the first 2 annuals, and a special crossover issue, Batman and the Outsiders number 5. So that is that. So let's crack this one open. Again, you have this boring looking black cardboard cover, but the contents is wonderful and makes up for it. And again, on this, the binding is wonderful. You see a nice eye there, lays beautifully and flat, makes for an awesome reading experience. Again, the end papers, that's another great thing about this series of omnibuses, is everything matches. It all belongs together. Again, you get a great table of contents. This includes a foreword from Marv Wolfman. In this one, he talks about how the first 20 issues were kind of developing the characters, kind of establishing them, and this is when they really got into the idea of telling ongoing stories across multiple issues, and really started to play with that. And you'll notice that when you get into Volume 2 here. In Volume 1 is very much that. It's very much establishing the characters. Volume 2 is really exciting and gets even better. So if you buy Volume 1 and even slightly enjoy it, just understand that Volume 2 just gets that much better, and Volume 3 is probably the best of the series that's been released so far. And we'll get to that. One thing I love about George Perez's artwork, especially, you'll see it established in Volume 2 here, not so much Volume 1 yet, but he really plays with panel layouts and does some really interesting things that are different than your typical, 9-panel grid, 8-panel grid, or whatever you would see in a typical superhero comic book. And it just makes for fun storytelling. I mean, that's one of the great things about the comic book medium, is being able to play around with things like that. And George Perez does not shy away from that concept at all. One great thing about this series, though, so it was DC's most popular title at one point. Most highest selling title. I can't talk. For the time that it was running in the 80s, and it was kind of the rival of Marvel's X-Men titles, Uncanny X-Men with Chris Claremont's run. So they're often compared to each other for that reason, because they're both the highest selling titles for the respective companies, the respective big two. And I think X-Men by Claremont had a few year jump on them, maybe 2 or 3 years head start. So you'll see a lot of times people will say, here's a great painted cover for the annual there. Trying to see if there's a indication of who did the cover art. I mean, I know it's George Perez, but I wonder who colored it. But, so they often get compared to each other, and you'll see people say, like, oh, the New Teen Titans stole these concepts from the X-Men, blah, blah, blah. And Marv Wolfman has been very open about, no, that's not what I was going for. I wasn't going for a rival to the X-Men. I was actually going for a rival to the Fantastic Four. And that makes a lot of sense to me, because he said that he wanted to have a lot of familial ties and themes going throughout the New Teen Titans. So here's Tara, who's obviously a pivotal character in this run, especially early on. And then you have, I'm blanking on who this character is here. Roy Harper, right? Who's in the famous drug issue of the Green Lantern Green Arrow run. And they talk about that in this run. They'll refer to the fact that he had a drug issue, which makes for some interesting storytelling points. But Marv Wolfman, who worked on the Fantastic Four previous to this, and when he was with Marvel, and he would talk about how the familial ties between those characters in the Fantastic Four, he wanted to adapt and use those kinds of themes with this group. So yes, there are a lot of similarities between X-Men by Claremont and New Teen Titans by Wolfman, but I like the fact that he tied into Fantastic Four more so. But I think they'll always be compared to each other. And actually, I haven't read. Here's Vigilante, another great character that Marv Wolfman created, and then he would go on to write the Vigilante series, which I think lasted like 18 issues. It is collected in trade paperback. But Marv Wolfman and Perez, I lost my train of thought there. Here's a guy that looks like Mr. T. Looks like B.A. Baracus. Oh yeah, sorry, that's what I was gonna say. The Chris Claremont Uncanny X-Men run. I actually haven't read a ton of that. I read all the key stories like Days of Future Past and stuff like that. But I'm excited because this year I'll be collecting the Omnibuses, volumes 1 through 4 that'll be released. And it's exciting that I'll be reading that in conjunction with my big read-through with the New Teen Titans series to kind of compare the two. Kind of be experiencing it as if I was growing up in the 80s and collecting them both off the racks. So this is a 2-issue series that ran with the Batman and the Outsiders and New Teen Titans. Batman and the Outsiders was a title that it was Batman and, as you can imagine, a team called the Outsiders. Here's that lineup right there, lineup of the New Teen Titans. This is a fun 2-issue arc because this finally delves into the fact of Dick Grayson trying to step out of the shadow of Batman. That's a theme that's constantly going on through the entirety of the series. Each character has their own unique arc, and they blend them together beautifully because Marv Wolfman's great at that. And Dick Grayson's arc, I don't know if I've said this in this video, but I've said it on previous videos, is one of my favorite superheroes, one of my favorite comic book characters. And so I just love the development and arc that his character can take over the years. And in this one in particular, it's him stepping out of the shadow of Batman. So yes, he's been running around in this Robin costume, constantly being compared to Batman, constantly being known as the boy wonder, the sidekick of Batman. And in this issue, he steps up to Batman. And not unlike Steve Kerr stepping up to Michael Jordan, if you've watched the Last Dance series that's been running on ESPN and Netflix, which has been great. But it's just finally like that boy steps out and becomes his own man. And it's just a great story arc. And then we'll see in the next volume what becomes of that. This is a fantastic issue. This is Who is Donna Troy? And you can see the neo-noir aspect to this. Immediately I was thinking, who did this? This is not George Perez. But as you can see, it is George Perez. So he's toying with the idea of doing this neo-noir detective story of Donna Troy trying to figure out her past. And it's just amazing storytelling. I love the fact that this really taps into Dick Grayson's detective skills, being in a neo-noir, him trying to investigate the past of Donna Troy kind of thing. I almost wish they went with that motif throughout the entirety of the issue, because it's just a great way to break up the storytelling of the rest of the volume, but they don't. And it doesn't mean that the story loses anything. It just would have been kind of neat to see, because it is a great story, and then they finish in with that neo-noir aesthetic. In this issue, but here's this one of the best 2-page splash pages, one of the most famous scenes of George Perez's artwork on the book. I mean, just so dynamic, and every character showing off their abilities. It's just fantastic. Those are the kind of things you can expect in this run. None of these volumes have a lot of back matter, I think, which I guess you can say is a downside of this run, but they have biographies of all the creators that touched the volume. So that's pretty much it. So that's volume 2. Volume 2 again ends on the idea of Dick Grayson trying to become his own character. I believe that volume leaves off with him abandoning the name of Robin, and the Titans are all kind of joking about what's he going to call himself now, kind of thing. So this is volume 3, the best volume of the bunch probably. And again, you get the boring cardboard, but here's the cover of it. And the spine, you get Raven on the spine this time. And the issues this covers, you can see, issues 42 through 58 of the classic run, and then the 3rd annual, and then series 2, 1 through 9. So again, there's a renumbering involved, which is again one of the fantastic reasons to collect in the Omnibus format, because you don't have to go back issue diving trying to figure out which number 1 you need or which number 7 do you need. See, the binding's great on this one, lays flat. So this one starts off with probably the most famous New Teen Titans story that there is. You can see table of contents, introduction, same as the last two. But this starts off with the Judas Contract, probably the most famous storyline of this entire run. It's been made into a movie, maybe even multiple animated movies, I'm not sure. If there's ever a Teen Titans run that's collected in like the absolute format, it would probably be this one. this is really like the magnum opus of the entire run. It's what they've been building to for this entire run so far. Kind of culminates here, and then they build off of it from there. But the Judas Contract, as you can imagine with the name Judas involved, includes some backstabbing. Includes a lot of the character development that they've been building to at this point comes to fruition here. And it involves Tara, as you can imagine. Try not to spoil too much here, but where's the there's the cover for book 2. And again, you get that neo-noir aspect without the black backgrounds this time, which you could have kept in. But I love that that's kind of like an ongoing theme of Dick Grayson in this run. It gives the character its own eye and lets him stand out from the other characters in the book. You know, when you get that effect, when you get into neo-noir mode, it means that Dick Grayson's doing some detective work. So here's the cover of issue 44, book 3 of the Judas Contract storyline. Matches the cover of the book. And you see Dick Grayson in his Nightwing costume. I actually hated this costume when I was a kid. I much preferred the Chuck Dixon run, where he wears like the black costume with the Nightwing. I hated this collar and the 70s effect. But I think as I've gotten older, I kind of enjoy a cheesy costume that a character might have. I enjoyed it when Marvel would embrace the cheesy old costumes in their movies, rather than dismiss them like the old X-Men movies, when they would make them wear like all leather, black leather costumes and try to like shy away from the embarrassment of their older days. Get a great wedding issue. Can never miss out on a great wedding issue in a comic book. I think both comic books and pro wrestling have that trope that they latch onto to sell books or get some TV ratings. And this book would also see this development. So you see here the typical, and you see the last 2 volumes have this, your typical standard panel border here, the white border, and they lose that as they go on, kind of there. And then this, and it takes up the entire book, which is great when you have the oversized artwork. Look at that image of Trigon. That is amazing. When you have oversized artwork like this, it really lends itself really well to have it take up the whole page. It's just amazing artwork. And that will last through the entirety of the next volume too, will be this artwork. I mean, you can see it just when you close the book. You can see how all the white border pages, and then you see this color border here towards the end. But it's just really awesome. So again, I don't think there's much back matter on here. I think, oh, these are the Tales of the Teen Titans covers. So these were reprints of the older issues. Back then, trade paperbacks and that kind of thing were not as popular of a thing that was happening. So a lot of times books would just reprint old ones. So if you have somebody that kind of jumped on the Titans during the Judas Contract issues, and they'd be like, man, I want to read the old issues. I want to know what's going on, or what built up to this. How did all this happen? But they couldn't find the old issues because they'd have to go back issue diving or what have you. They just reprint them, and they reprinted them in the Tales of the New Teen Titans. X-Men did the same thing with the classic X-Men run and that kind of thing. So here's volume 4. This is the most recent released. This came out last November, I believe. And this is when George Perez has gone off the title. So you saw Marv Wolfman, the voice of the New Teen Titans, if you will, writing the stories. This one includes Series 2, issues 10 through 31, the first 2 annual issues, and a story from Omega Man 34. And again, like you see on this, the ends of the paper here, you can see that there's going to be artwork that covers the majority of the time. I guess I'm getting a lot of white borders there. Majority of the time you'll see the artwork just bleeding onto the ends of the page. And this is a continuation of the run. And people would say, like, once Perez jumped off the book, it really took a downturn. I'll be honest, I haven't read Volume 4 yet. But I just have a feeling that Marv Wolfman has such a voice for his characters that there's got to be some interesting stories to be told. And I hope that DC collects the entirety of the run. I'd love to have it all on my shelf. The Marriage with Starfire. See, they're all getting married. And at one point they would actually drop the teen part of their team name and become... I don't know when it happened. They could become the Team Titans, the TEAM Titans at one point, as well as just the Titans. So they lose the teen part of it. Because in these books, this run takes place, I think 3 or 4 years after the last Titans book, and the last Teen Titans book, which was in the Bronze Age. There's a Bronze Age Omnibus that covers that. By the time they get to this point, Marv Wolfman and George Perez kind of worked with the idea of these being... All these characters are kind of in their 19, 20, 21 range, age range. So it's kind of silly to call them the Teen Titans, but I think it's just like a thing that's stuck from forever, from just like how the title is arranged. So yeah, these are the Dune Teen Titans books. The cover price, I guess I should have gone over that. Volume 4 is $99. Volume 3, $99. I believe that 3 of them are $99, if I'm correct. No. So volumes 2 and 3, I'm sorry, correction. Volumes 3 and 4 are $99 cover price. Volumes 1 and 2 are $75. So if you go on a place like In Stock Trades, Amazon, something, you could probably get them up to 50% off, 42 to 50% off. So you get it. The whole run of books you probably get for like $150, $160. I think if my math's correct there, maybe a little bit more. Well worth it though. One of the best runs in comics ever. If you love a good team up book, you love superheroes, you love great character development and great artwork, give my highest recommendation. One of the best runs in comics. Definitely must read at least for any comic book collecting fan. So again, thank you. Like and subscribe to the channel. I have more videos coming out, more video ideas, and I encourage you guys to leave some comments. I love talking to you guys. I love when you guys give me some more comic book recommendations or tips, or fill me on things I got wrong maybe, or some facts that maybe I left out. And yeah, so we'll keep that going. So thank you guys. Have a good day.